November 19, 1942 Wolfschanz, East Prussia. Adolf Hitler stood over a map that no longer obeyed him. Red pins pressed inward from the north and south of Stalingrad, their arcs almost touching. The Sixth Army, once the pride of the Wehrmacht, sat at the center, frozen into the Russian steppe. Field Marshal Friedrich Paulus had warned him for weeks. Fuel was gone. Winter had arrived. The Soviet buildup was obvious. Hitler did not look at Paulus. He looked at Stalingrad. To him, the city was no longer just a battlefield. It was a symbol, a name, a personal challenge. And in that moment, Hitler made the decision that would cost more than 100,000 lives. He forbade retreat. Across the continent, the consequences of that order were already unfolding. On the morning of November 19th, Soviet artillery erupted along the Don River. Thousands of guns fired at once, shaking the frozen ground beneath German trenches. Red Army soldiers, many barely trained, some still wearing summer uniforms, surged forward through snow and smoke. They were not attacking Stalingrad itself. They were attacking its flanks. Those flanks were held by Romanian and Hungarian units, under-equipped, under-supported, and fatally exposed. Within hours, Soviet armor broke through. By the next day, the southern pincer smashed forward. On November 23, Soviet tanks met at Kalakan Don. The encirclement was complete. Inside the pocket, nearly 300,000 Axis soldiers were trapped. Friedrich Paulus understood immediately what this meant. He had studied encirclements. He knew the math of supply and distance. The Luftwaffe could not feed an army of this size through the air. Winter temperatures were already dropping below -20°C. Ammunition was limited. Fuel was nearly gone. Paulus requested permission to break out while there was still strength to do so. Hitler refused. At his headquarters, Hitler convinced himself and those around him that Stalingrad could be held. Göring promised that the Luftwaffe could supply the army from the air. Hitler believed him because he needed to. Retreat was not just a military decision to Hitler. It was a moral failure. A retreat at Stalingrad would mean admitting that Germany's war of conquest had limits. So instead of movement, he ordered stillness. And stillness, in war, is often fatal. As December set in, the pocket became a grave. German soldiers burned furniture for heat. Horses were slaughtered and eaten raw. Ammunition was rationed shot by shot. Frostbite claimed fingers and feet before bullets did. The wounded lay untreated in cellars, hospitals without medicine, listening to Soviet artillery draw closer each day. The Luftwaffe delivered less than a third of the supplies needed to keep the army alive. Planes crashed on frozen runways or were shot down as they descended. What little arrived was never enough. Still, Hitler forbade surrender. On January 10, 1943, the Soviets launched their final assault. They crushed the pocket from the outside in, block by block, bunker by bunker. Paulus radioed Berlin again. The situation was hopeless. Hitler responded by promoting him to field marshal. No German field marshal had ever surrendered. The message was clear. Die. On January 31, 1943, Paulus surrendered the southern pocket of Stalingrad. 2 days later, the northern pocket followed. Of the nearly 300,000 men trapped, fewer than 100,000 went into captivity. Most of them would never return home. Tens of thousands were already dead. Tens of thousands more would die in Soviet camps. This was not the result of a lost battle. It was the result of a decision. A single refusal to retreat. A belief that willpower could replace logistics. That symbolism mattered more than human lives. Stalingrad did not just destroy an army, it shattered the illusion of German invincibility. From that moment forward, the Wehrmacht would fight defensively, desperately, retreating across the same ground it had once conquered. And for the men who froze and starved inside that pocket, the cost of that mistake was not measured in maps or speeches. It was measured in bodies left beneath the snow.